Today, I want to show you the comic run that cemented Spider-Man as one of the coldest motherfuckers known to man. This video will cover the Spider-Man run called Back in Black, and some crazy shit is about to go down, so grab your popcorn. I won't start from the absolute beginning because you already know this fella got bitten by a spider and now he's sticky or something. However, what you might not know is that this comic run takes place just after the Civil War comic run, in which Spider-Man reveals himself to be Peter Parker to the world. Unfortunately for Peter, putting his face and name out there might have been one of the worst mistakes he could have possibly made. With his identity out there, some of his old enemies have come back from the woodwork, including Wilson Fisk. The Kingpin takes a hit out on the Motel 3, and we soon see the assassin making his way to the vantage point with his sniper ready. MJ and May are in his sights. The sniper waits and waits for Peter to return, because if he doesn't take out the webhead, then Kingpin will surely take him out instead. After a night of fighting alongside the other heroes, Peter finally returns and the assassin gets notified. Peter's Spidey senses tingle and he peers out of the window, but the hitman's finger is already firmly pressed onto the trigger. The shot is finally released, but thankfully Peter's reflexes are too damn fast. He grabs MJ and takes her into cover, ensuring she's okay. Thankfully she is, but there's still one more person in the room. Peter's face shows a look of horror as he turns to see Aunt May covering her bullet wound with bleeding hands. Peter holds May within his arms and she grips onto him with pain searing through her body. His expression changes quickly from distraught to anger, saying no more. He turns and bolts out the door, leaving both May and MJ in the motel room. Shots are still ringing out with the webhead being the target, but the assassin soon stops when he sees Peter bolting towards him. Pete stops in the car park though and hurls a fucking jeep towards the sniper. Pretty valid crash out if you ask me, but I do hope the owner had decent insurance. Now that I mention it, do we actually ever see Peter driving? The jeep crashes through the wall and knocks the sniper onto his ass. Peter runs back into the room and grabs May. MJ was on the phone to 911, but Pete says that there's no time as she would bleed out before they get there. Peter crashes through the hospital window and places her onto the bed, with doctors and nurses soon running to her aid. Peter is sat on the side of the hospital wall, which is a sentence I don't think has ever been said. The hospital staff continue to work on May, stating she has lost a lot of blood. The next page takes us to prison because you've been a naughty boy. On a reel though, an officer comes up to Fisk and cryptically tells him that the sniper hit one target, but the other two got away fine. Pete and MJ are hiding in plain sight, meeting up in the city center. Pete tells her that May is stable, she's not good, but she's still alive. He airs out his worries about having to afford the healthcare to MJ, but soon dips out back to the motel to look for any clues as to who tried to kill him and his family. The policeman originally tries to stop him, but soon finds himself strung up and suffocating affixed to the wall. Peter walks into the garage/bedroom and scowls across the room. His spider sense tingles and he finds a lens on the floor from the sniper. Written on the scope was the manufacturer, so Pete has an idea of where to go. He walks past the officer, still stuck to the stairs. Peter already knows where the big gun runners tend to hang out, people that even the police are scared to approach. All fear has left Pete's body at this point though, and he's only fueled on anger. He smashes through the side of another building facing these thugs and proceeds to lay a vicious beatdown on the 5 criminals in the middle of their gun deal. There's bullets flying everywhere, but Peter's body avoids them on instinct. An unmasked, angry Peter is not somebody you want to be fucking with, and Peter continues to throw punches, kicks. Like look at this one. He's getting them both at once. He's not pulling punches, he's not even worried about hurting them, as you can probably tell from his blood-soaked fists. Everybody but one of them is down and out. Peter approaches him and shoves the scope right into his nostrils. The thug is adamant he's never seen him before in his life, but after Peter breaks this dude's hand like a cracker, he starts to talk. He tells Pete the exact make, model, and even how expensive they are, including how very few dealers can carry this exact scope. Peter sneers and demands the dealer's name, but the thug states that he's as good as dead if he talks. The anger in Peter's eyes say it all though. He tightens his grip on the thug and states, "What they do to you in a day or two is a fraction of what I will do to you right now, if the next word out of your mouth isn't a first name followed by a last name and an address." The criminal is clearly scared absolutely shitless, so he starts to talk. The next page brings us over to MJ in hospital. She's being taken to May, but the doctors explain that despite all they've done, she's slipped into a coma, and the one thing keeping her alive is the collection of machinery that she's hooked up to. The doctor continues to speak and states that it's possible that she might pull through, but sooner or later she's going to die. Peter swings up to the building, a thunder is crashing down and rain is bellowing onto the wet stone. Pete stashed something up there, something he wishes he'd never had to use again, but now the gloves are off. He dons the black suit and vows to find the people who shot May and promises to kill them. Issue 2 now brings us to Peter perched high up in the American skies in the middle of a phone call to MJ. She reiterates all the doctors have told her during the visit, but Pete is adamant she's going to pull through. He's wondering if there's anything he can do to help, but there's not. MJ isn't even allowed into the room. She says to him that if there's anything he's got to do, best go and deal with it now, because the only thing in the hospital they can do is cry. Peter's inner pain once again turns to anger, and he says to MJ that if one thing's for sure, she's going to be seeing a lot more people in the hospital before the day is out. All Spider-Man has to enact his revenge is 4 names, and they're the type of people that don't like to rat out on their customer, but he can fix that very, very quickly. He's already taken down these 3 dealers and finds himself gripping the next target by the throat. He plays the usual bout of innocence in that he has no idea what the fuck Spider-Man's talking about, but one strong yeet is all it takes to rejig his memory. Peter is reminded that half the country is looking to arrest his ass, but the gun dealer stupidly asks, "What are you gonna do about it?" Spider-Man looks to the broken window that he entered from and tightens his grip on the collar of the thug. Peter throws him, lets the orange-clothed dude fall through the air, and halfway between the floor and his apartment window, Spidey takes a grip of his ankle using his webbing. The spider descends and then asks if he'd like to ask him a second time what he's gonna do about it. Unsurprisingly, he spills the beans. Peter is given 3 names, the first 2 belonging to wealthy hunters that like to play unfairly, but the third name was the one Spider-Man was looking for. It was revealed to be Jake Martino, a hitman working around the country doing jobs that no one else wanted to do. Spidey then realizes that the attack wasn't personal, someone's hired him, but the question now is who? Spidey traps these police officers in an alleyway with webbing blocking their exit. He maneuvers his way through this system and finds the details on his attempted assassin. He manages to find his address and breaks through the window. Again, a fellow that definitely isn't Jake comes around the corner and is rightfully pissed that this window is smashed into 4 billion pieces. Turns out that Jake does indeed live here, but he dipped and taken all of his stuff with him. This fella is his landlord. Jake was here about 20 minutes ago and he's since made his way to the train station. Spidey follows his clue and heads down there. People are surrounding him, but Peter's sure that his Spidey sense will be able to track him down. Closing his eyes and concentrating, he finds him. Martino starts running and Peter is of course in pursuit, but Jake turns around and starts firing. That is until he runs out of ammo. Jake grabs his pistol and attempts a killing shot, but the spider makes him drop the gun by snapping his arm. Peter demands him to pick it back up, but upon refusal, he slams Jake's head into a concrete pillar. Peter looks into the eyes of the wannabe killer and promises that he's going to kill him. If he tells him who hired him now, he'll make it quick. Jake stutters, fear is painted all over his face, but then shots ring out from the distance. Peter of course manages to avoid the gunfire, but Martino is hit multiple times. Spider-Man manages to throw a tracker on the fleeing gunman just as police arrive at the scene. Spider-Man stays with Martino and is clung to the ambulance as it speeds to the hospital. He watches the doctors rush him into the emergency room as MJ approaches from the corner. She says that she has been worried about him, but he skips the formalities and asks about May. The news isn't good, and she isn't going to make it. The next page shows us the contrast between Jake and May. She is being assisted by life support, but the assassin takes his last breath on the operating table and passes away due to his injuries. Pete and MJ are outside when he senses the spider tracker near. He turns his head to see this ginger man with a matching suit jacket on the phone. He confirms to whoever's on the other line that the assassin is indeed deceased. This is when Pete walks up and webs his mouth closed. Peter grabs his phone and listens in. From a single sentence, Peter recognizes the voice on the other end of the phone. It's Wilson Fisk. Peter starts the conversation with a hello. It's at this point that Kingpin also recognizes the wall crawler and asks him what he can do for him. Peter lowers his brow and said, "Just one thing, Mr. Fisk. You can die." This now brings us on to issue 3, with the phone conversation continuing and Fisk explaining to Peter that he does not die. He has people that do that for him. Peter claps back and says that he's broken basically every law in the last 24 hours. What's one more? Pete closes the phone and turns his attention to the webbed up henchman. He yanks away the webbing and takes at least half of a mustache with it. Peter demands to know everything about the man he has just killed, but this stupid ginger bugger plays the stupid card until Pete says to him, "I can hear your heartbeat. You're lying. Lie to me again and I'll pull that out of your chest and show it to you." This silly bitch begins to spill the beans and mentions that Fisk wanted the guy dead because he knew something that Kingpin wanted to keep quiet. The fear in his eyes proves to Peter that he's telling the truth. Peter hears the footsteps of MJ approaching. He doesn't want the word getting out that his wife and aunt are at the hospital, so he grabs the ginger man by the ankle and zips away. The next page takes us to Kingpin still holed up in his cell. He starts dismantling the table with wads of cash falling from the legs. He looks at the officer and in exchange for this sack of cash, Mr. Fisk asks for 2 things. The officer to look the other way for the night and his clothing from the evidence locker. We snap to Pete again and the man who was apparently called Jim. Peter had a pretty drawn out monologue explaining the food chain, predator and prey. Peter explains that anyone who touches his family drop to the bottom of the food chain and the only person at the top is him. MJ and Peter are by the side of May in the hospital bed. Her condition hasn't improved and neither is their finance situation. They are paying for everything in cash and it's only a matter of time until they run dry. Peter tries a Hail Mary, something that can save them money problems and also save May. Pete once gave May a blood transfusion and it saved her life. The only issue is that the radiation in his blood also almost killed her. Thankfully, he was able to retrieve a serum that nullified the adverse effects on May. The only thing he can hope is that the serum had lasting effects and she can accept his blood again. He sends MJ into the inventory room to get the the tools he needs to perform the blood transfer. Needles are inserted into the pier and the transfusion takes place. Peter is lightheaded and weak, but he has a certain someone who needs to confront. He once again yeets himself out the window and leaves May and MJ in the room with a nurse. Spider-Man makes his way to prison. We're inside, the lights brighten the cold flooring, and the cell doors unlock. The Kingpin unboxes his typical attire, and Spider-Man dons his black suit. Peter hops across the rooftops and makes his way to Fisk's position. The Kingpin struts across the prison floor as if he owns the establishment, and then comes to a halt under a main spotlight. Then, Spider-Man breaks through one more window and descends in front of Fisk. The penultimate issue, Fisk vs. Spider-Man, the fight for vengeance. Fisk does what he does best and tries to belittle the Spider. He calls him a chump, of all things, and then brings up the fact that his wife is living in a 2-bit hotel, his aunt is dying in the hospital because he's too much of a pussy to stand and take a bullet for her. He says, I guess you can't make an omelette without breaking a few old ladies. This is where he fucked up. As soon as the last word left his lips, Peter's flurry begins. His strikes are so fast there isn't a second for the Kingpin to react. Peter leaps over the fat bastard and lets his prey catch his breath for a second. Fisk notices that he isn't cracking the usual jokes, and even humor has abandoned the husk of a once loved hero. The ref doesn't need to call the fighters back into the ring for this one. Spider-Man once again lunges at Kingpin, with fists moving so quickly, he is seemingly getting attacked from every direction at once. There's blood pouring from the face of the baldy, and Spider-Man towering above him. The silence is unbearable for Fisk. You said you were coming to kill me. Are you here to fight or dance? Say something, damn you. Peter quickly fires back with, alright. Spider-Man explains that Fisk has no idea what this suit stands for. It represents a promise about all of the things he would do and all of the things he said he would never do. All the lines that he said he would never cross, because doing so would destroy everything that this suit stands for, and that's why he's confused. Spider-Man says, I'm not here to kill you. The mask comes off along with the upper half of his suit. Peter looks at Fisk and states, I am. The brow of Parker lowers and he powers towards Kingpin. Peter absolutely bodies him. Teeth are shattered, nose are broken, and egos are destroyed. Strikes are thrown with such velocity that the clothing on the body of Fisk starts to shred. Kingpin is thrown across the room and Peter starts to aura farm. He says, for all the money, cruelty, and big talk, you have no real power. At the end of the day, you're just a fat man with an attitude. A balloon waiting for someone to stick a needle in it. And I am the needle. A battered and bruised Wilson Fisk lunges at Peter, but the Spider dodges, leaps, ducks, and counterattacks. Fisk is stunned, blood pouring out of his face, and Peter demands he gets up.
Go to hell. I'll get up when I can't.
That's my Fisk voice, I hope you like it. Peter grabs Fisk by the skin of his chest and pulls him eye level. He then slaps the shit out of him so damn hard, the skin on the big man's face starts to tear. Peter reestablishes his grip and pulls his wrist towards the broken jaw of the Kingpin. He threatens to pour a stream of webbing deep into his throat, his esophagus into his lungs, turning his entire respiratory system into one solid chunk of useless tissue and webbing. It takes 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Whoa. Peter throws him against a wall. Kingpin says that if he's going to kill him, just get it over with. Peter towers over him and says, I'm going to kill you. And I am, but I didn't say I was going to do it today. I've done something far worse than kill you, Fisk. I've beaten you. The moment May dies, I'm coming back for you. I will finish what I've started, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. I swear to you on my life and soul and everything I hold dear, you'll be dead. Peter turns to the other prisoners and tells them that if anyone dares touch those dear to him, they die painfully, slowly, definitively. Peter casts a web for escape, pulls himself away and says, see you around, Mr. Fisk. Count on it. The page then casts to the other prisoners, staring at a defeated Fisk with a disgruntled look. He clambers his way back to his cell, broken, bruised, and embarrassed. This brings us to the end of issue 4. The final issue brings us back into the hospital with MJ, May, and Pete. Peter has a very one-sided conversation with May before we jump to the next morning, with a nurse coming into the room to discuss May's blood work with MJ. Peter steals these documents from her desk and comes to a realization. The transfusion was useless, and it didn't work at all. Pete and MJ discuss the next step, but mid-conversation, Reverend Whitcomb walks through the door. Not wanting to be seen, Peter once again jumps out of the window. He listens in on the conversation and hears that the staff have informed him May is about to enter a terminal phase in her treatment, and as uncomfortable as it may be, they need to plan for what is soon about to happen. Peter has a defeated look upon his face when the funeral arrangements are mentioned, but we then cut to the police station. Turns out a file turned up a few days ago, an old lady with a gunshot wound. No police call, no 911, so it rang up as suspicious. A detective makes his way to the hospital and starts to question the nurse. Why is there radiation in her blood? Where is the husband of the niece that hasn't left her side? The silly nurse then tries to give her account of what she thought happened, with Pete shooting the woman and dropping her to the hospital as a last resort. The old lady will ruin the whole thing if she woke up, so the niece might be making sure she doesn't talk. Obviously, this is a load of horseshit, but the detective doesn't know that. She gives him the directions to the room and Peter's Spidey sense start to go off. MJ answers the door after a knock when the lights suddenly go off. The detective cuffs MJ to the door, but a disgruntled voice emerges from the darkness.
Let it go. Get on the floor. I won't tell you again.
You got that right.
A shot goes off as Peter dives towards the officer with a fist clenched. He knocks him unconscious and proceeds to rip the handcuff off the door's handle. Peter ties the man up who just got KO'd and makes for the window. Somehow, he manages to get an ambulance. Oh shit, we see Peter driving. Oh, that's a cool callback. He changes into some scrubs while MJ steers a transfer document. Aunt May is taken to the back of the ambulance, rushed to the next hospital, and is allowed a room despite the minimal space. Peter stands outside and reflects. 9 felony counts. Not by someone in a mask that can't be tracked down. Not by Spider-Man. By me. I have become the one thing that I set out to fight. A criminal. I'm lost. God help me, I'm so lost.
And that is the ending of Back in Black. In order to find out what happens to May, we need to read the conclusion in the comic run one more day. If you have a little bit of knowledge in the backstory of Spider-Man comics, you know that this shit gets really weird, really fast in what's to come. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed what happens in this comic run or absolutely fucking hated it, please let me know why in the comments below. If you enjoyed hearing me talk about these odd superhero stories, then maybe drop a like and subscribe. It'll make me feel warm inside. Thank you very much. Goodbye.